Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having us. So many familiar faces.
Nice to see all of you. So we were chatting before the panel and have a lot to talk about, probably more than 30 minutes, and a lot more than what we said we'd talk about. So we'll just chat. I think there's a lot that's happening in this space, obviously on top of Bright Data, but in the applied space, in the platform space. And I'm excited to chat with both of you as a potential customer here, where Notion is trying to surface a ton of these content. It's always interesting to get to ask you all the questions I've always wanted to ask, but in front of 200 people. So let's get started. First, let's start with the basis of why we're here. Why is it different? I worked at Google 10 years ago. We were building search. What's all the hype? What's different about how agents consume it and building it for agents, and what's changed? Maybe Parag, do you want to start?
As mentioned, I used to build Twitter, and you used to build everything imagining your customer. What is your customer? They were on a mobile device. They're impatient. They don't tell you what they want. You have a second. If you take longer, you lose them. If you put content on page 3, they don't get there. If you put bad content up above, they're more likely to click that than better content down below. And they do a random walk of clicks on whatever interface you put in front of them. Agents are not like that. AIs are not like that. They work on tokens. They can be way more patient or way more impatient. The 1-second thing no longer applies. It's either 100 milliseconds or 100 seconds, because if they're working overnight. So the problem is different. The business models are different. Everything's different. Customer's different. The world changes.
So, Parag has deep industry expertise. I come more from the research side of things. I've been building agents in various contexts over the years. And what he said is quite accurate. It's interesting. There are some things that can distract agents, but there are some ways in which the content that you feed to agents can actually be noisier than what a human could possibly consume. There was an example for something that we were building where somebody's tracking discussions or reviews of the Comet browser by Perplexity. Now, the Perplexity team goes and holds an AMA on Reddit. 4 people go, they answer a bunch of questions. If, as a human, you were consuming that, it is a threaded view of questions being asked, responses, more responses. Somewhere in those Q&A, one person said the Android version of this is releasing in a few months, and in a different place, somebody said the Windows version is releasing after the Android version. This entire piece of information, if a human had to consume, they would A, not be on top of it, B, likely not see all the answers. But for an agent to pull all of this out and summarize and tell you, by the way, the Perplexity team held a AMA, this is their roadmap, because it's composed together bits of information that you've laid across the web. In that sense, I actually think agents can have a greater attention span and are less distracted than the random walk that humans do.
So we're all computer scientists, so we're probably all experimentalists, right? And when I hear this, something that I loved about the old days was you had your metrics. You had your click-through rate, your mean reciprocal rank, and your ad impressions. And every search quality review was super easy, because if you regress on any of those, it was probably not being shipped to prod, and everything was quantified. What does that look like today? When you're releasing things, what metrics are you optimizing for? What is the agent equivalent of an ad impression or CTR? And how do you optimize and iterate?
I think you should start this one.
Great. We can spend 30 minutes on this question. Okay.
You have 25 minutes and 56 seconds.
Done. Okay. Those metrics, we use them. They're extremely noisy. Dwell time, noisy. Clicks, noisy. You had to append them with human raters. By the way, noisy. Inter-agent agreement on search ranking metrics, you worked at Google, wasn't very high. So we've been, anytime you look at feedback signals or metrics, you have to understand there is signal, there is noise, and people do a lot of work, a lot of research to extract signal. Sometimes you can extract more signal if you have large numbers. Sometimes you can extract more signals by throwing away data, outliers, cleaning it, doing research on it. Now, with agents, it turns out the problem is slightly easier, not harder. In our world, we build a bunch of search products, but we also build enrichment and deep research products. If you looked at our deep research API, which is the best in the world, you see a call could consider 10,000 URLs based on early stage ranking signals, read 5 to 30% of them, eventually produce an answer which will cite 1 to 5% of them, right? Each of these is based on escalating levels of compute that's getting thrown. Like any search ranker is just like a early stage ranker followed by even more compute, followed by even more compute, followed by even more compute. In the agent abstraction, that's what's happening here. Now, if a piece of content, it's no longer a URL ranking problem as an aside, it's a content ranking problem, gets cited and is useful for doing the work you set out to do, that's more clear, crisper signal than a human clicking along their random walk on a URL. And we can use that signal to build metrics, to improve the ranker, and to improve everything. And guess what? You have an infinitely scalable way of throwing more compute to clean up the signal if you don't like the signal to noise trade-offs you're making in a very continuous way. So we now have all of these amazing tools to go beyond the metrics and the feedback signals we've ever had access to build really amazing technology underneath.
So Dhruv, I have a question for you. You're building on top of an API like Parallel, where all of a sudden the way that the search results and the answers are delivered, they're optimized differently. Let's say you're a developer and you're using a classical SERP API and making that transition. How do we interact with them differently? What expectations change? How do you build differently?
Yeah, so for context, our product is called Scouts. It's a monitoring product. Someone comes in and says, let me know when something happens and something is expressed in natural language. You know, my favorite artist comes into town, or this person announces that they're leaving their job but doesn't say where they're going. I'm a recruiter, maybe I want to draft an email to them. And this is across the web, so we use APIs where available, SERP or other search APIs where available, but some information is locked behind browsers. You just have to click buttons and get to that information. It's sitting inside databases that do not expose themselves to the world with APIs. And some part of the web is just older. It just won't have APIs available. What does that look like from a consumer perspective? Well, we gather all of this relevant information. We have to tell you when something changes about the world. And so now I think of these agents as almost like buyer's agents. This is a high degree of expressed intent that the user said. They are monitoring something because either they want to buy tickets, they want a reservation, they want to purchase something, or they want to contact someone. And so to the point of economic incentives, it can go both ways. In some cases, the agent should pay for access to content. In some other cases, the agent should be paid for surfacing that information to their user because you're operating on a consumer or a user's expressed intent. And so that economic incentive can change. I think it's going to take years, but the web and the economic structures around it were designed for human eyeballs. Advertisements were designed for human eyeballs. Those will not be the drivers of change. Most information will be consumed by agents. And so we will just create another economy if businesses, instead of spending on Instagram reel ads, will probably want to cater their advertisement towards consumer agents that might surface that information to a user.
Yeah, I mean, I think this idea of retrieval not just being static web pages is often really overlooked when people start working on this problem, and then they realize that a majority of web pages are paginated through by a user. I think computer use is probably across the space, not just in web search, where we're going to see 2026 go in terms of developments from both frontier labs and providers. And when I think about that as a buyer, I'm curious, and we chatted about this a little bit before the panel, let's say that I'm LinkedIn or I'm Reddit, and I see now that a primary user of my data aren't humans, but it's the two of y'all, right? Are there ways that you see your partners structuring their websites differently, or what they're serving differently? Is it an adversarial relationship? Is it complementary? Where do you see those relationships in that economy moving?
I'll start again. So one, again, another plug for our website, parallel.ai. We have a machine click. It's partly a play at what we think the future looks like. We think ultimately if you're going to publish to the web, you will want to publish to machines and to humans until you publish only to machines. So we're going to go through this transition. As with all transitions, you're going to live in this world where you're going to publish to two entities. In these two worlds, you will have slightly different incentives, slightly different business models. For some people, at different points of time, it will look collaborative versus adversarial. We see that all the time. I think it's adversarial only because we haven't yet figured out how to divide the pie. Now, it's very obvious that with agents, we can do more, allowing that the pie does expand. Like people can do work. If you look at people in finance, people in sales, coding agents, by using agents, you can drive productivity, you can improve margins, any way you look at the economic pie, the pie grows by collaborating. As with all problems, when the pie grows, until you figure out how to divide the pie up in a way that all participants have incentive to collaborate, collaboration doesn't happen. And then people fight it because people haven't settled into new ways of partnering. We're in the early phases of some of these partnerships now emerge. We work with publishers, and we're setting the initial set of deals and discovering along the way how to have all publishers who have very different business models, like subscription-based, ad-based, e-commerce-based, to want to collaborate with agents via us. And I think as we've worked through more of these, this collaboration will only increase month on month and year on year.
One point, so I'll make 2 points. One, to your earlier comment about the web for human consumption versus agent consumption. The analogy that I hold in my mind is to autonomous driving and self-driving cars. Road networks today are laid out for human driving. Cities are built for human driving, and so we're having to share that space. We know we could make autonomous cars more efficient if we cordoned off the pesky humans, and we sensed roads and made it easier for autonomous driving cars to drive. But that's not going to happen overnight. Today, the web is kind of like that. We built it for human consumption and human servicing. For a long time, we're going to have to share this space. There are going to be agents operating, being fed information either through LLMs.txt or through an API call or through an agent's context protocol. But there's a long tail. There's 50,000 school districts in the US that are maintaining their websites with some bespoke indie developer that post a PDF on their web page which is scanned from their hand notes. Do those people, are they going to have APIs available for that information? No. You're just going to have to share this space. And what that looks like from an AI perspective is you're just going to have machines acting like humans, sitting there, clicking buttons, scrolling PDF pages, doing OCR on the fly. And that's what it's going to look like for many years till that transition is completed. But I do think we will get to the other side where you will just talk to digital content, and you will receive high bandwidth information through generative interfaces. That is fundamentally what a browser is, but it's not going to be the browser of today. It's going to be a completely different interface.
So, and I think you're right. Like, I think in the past, call it year and a half, our agents are coming online, right? And we're having the equivalent of a dot-com boom that we had as humans with each other among our agents, so to speak, today. And I don't personally believe that this will be as exciting of a hype in 2 years. It'll be a given, right, that your agent can speak with the web and iterate with the web, personally. And please challenge me. But if that's the case, for people that are accessing search, is search just another commodity? Like, what is the definitive thing that makes a company good at providing access to the web? Is it a commodity that they all should do? Is it quality? How do you think we'll be thinking about an agent's access to the web in 2 years from now?
The web is a messy, complicated place. I think in a world, you could have thought of search was a solved problem about a decade ago, or it remains unsolved even today, as far as the old human search system was concerned. You could have thought of Twitter's recommendation system or ranking problem as a solved problem from 5 years ago. It worked, or it remains unsolved today. I think ultimately it's about getting the amount of data on the web is extremely large and will continue to proliferate at a crazy rate. 99.9% of the web is junk. That will remain the case. It will take large amounts of compute to figure out what's junk and what's not, and what matters. And every month, the bar will go up in terms of what should be possible and what is possible. And as long as you reach some saturation on being able to extract data, insights, competitive advantages, early insight to take an action, the problem will remain open. Sitting next to Dhruv, the problem on web search has been pull-based. The people come and search. Agents in 2 years are not going to come and search on parallel. Agents will tell parallel when to call them and wake them up so that they can do their work. Any work that can be done today will get done today by these agents. What will happen tomorrow?
Let's talk about that, Dhruv. So today, agents are reactive. They're based on some type of either asynchronous, very scheduled prompt or human interaction or other agents that are eventually come from humans. What does it look like with scouts when they're spending weeks monitoring the web? What does that different protocol look like, and where do you see us moving there?
Yeah, so for context, scouts have been out to a select set of waitlisted people for 3 months at this point. And what has been surprising is there are agents, these are agents that are extremely long running. For 3 months, at some cadence, sometimes an hour, sometimes a day, they've just been going out into the world, gathering information, deciding whether to give an update to a human or not. This is a very different paradigm. We are used to thinking of AI systems as triggered by some human request. And in this case, these agents have been running for months, not triggered by any human request, maybe steered. And an example that I've set up a few months ago, when Alex Wang was first hired, or Acqui hired at Meta, I set a scout up for, let me know about any information that is posted about Alex Wang. That slowly evolved. This is before the term meta superintelligence came out. It just wasn't announced. Over time, that became, all right, that team is now called meta superintelligence. Over time, that became, by the way, here are these outrageous offers being made to AI researchers, and here is the list of people who have just been hired. Over time, that became, by the way, there are signs of disgruntlement inside Meta. By the way, here are all the departures. Most recent update, here were the layoffs. That's a story in 6 parts, if you will. My prompt remained unchanged. I just wanted to track this piece of news. This is an extremely long-running query, so you have to deal with things like concept drift, which people at Google also studied a long time ago. We're going to have agents running for days, weeks, months, years at a time, interacting with digital content, getting steered by humans. And so you have all of these issues of intelligent scheduling, cost.
Yeah, I mean, it's very romantic sounding.
It exists.
And I would love to use it. Maybe you can know someone that can get me off the wait list. I do think, though, that, we're building asynchronous agents too at Notion. And one of the biggest quality challenges that we have is the inability for humans to interfere. right? And the quality bar is just exponentially higher when humans aren't able to reroute, when the agent isn't able to ask for permission to do things, right? The quality bar of sending an email is a lot higher if the human's not reviewing the data that's being sent. I'm curious how you tackle that problem. Does it change the way you build the agents in the first place? Or does it just increase the same work you do and you work harder and longer? What does that paradigm shift look like for you, Dhruv?
There's a reason we started with a read-only product. It doesn't purchase things for you, doesn't make reservations for you, and it's because from an AI perspective, I can see the even forgetting all the infra and the logistical challenges of logging in on the behalf of users, saving their credit cards in a secure and private manner. All of that aside, the capabilities are not there, and I'm not going to stand here and lie to you about AGI being around the corner. That's just not the case. So you have to start with some value proposition that a user sees on day one without trusting you. So they're not going to give you their logins, and they're not going to give you their credit cards. What they are willing to see is, can you take some cognitive load off from them? Monitoring is that case where you are clicking through buttons, telling them this piece of information. You're not spamming them. You only go to them when something high signal happens. And hopefully that lets you climb the staircase of trust. Hey, that 6:30 p.m. reservation you were looking for, it's available. If you just say yes, we will actually go book it for you. Because the booking part was 90%, telling you that it's available was 90% of the way there.
So let's talk about that, because that's actually, I believe, one of Parallel's kind of selling lines, right? 90% of what we do on the web is search, right? And really, we can really get a lot of that done with the types of services that are out today. But at the same time, that last 10% is what finishes the job. Where do you see that market moving? So for today, as a consumer, am I using one of your products to find everything and then just using the OpenTable API to make the reservation? Like, that feels a little broken, but we're calling her. I mean, this is a conversation on discovery, not action, right? So how does that bridge happen? And are you planning on owning that problem, or what's your strategy?
We'll see where the world takes us. But today, where we see true differentiation, right? I think a lot of problems on the web that feel like action are actually still read. Let me give you an example. You ask me a question saying, okay, does this e-commerce retailer accept Amex? Simple question. There is, by the read of the question, no action entailed in it. In order to process that question, you might have to take action by adding something to cart, going all the way to the end of a checkout flow, trying to check out as a guest if they allow it, otherwise figuring out how to get to the page where you can definitively know the answer. For an alternative e-commerce website, you might be able to look at their policies, and they have a refund policy on Amex, or they say something about it, and you know they accept Amex, right? So the word action is kind of, we have to separate into, is it an action that leads to a read outcome, or is that an action that leads to a transaction or something irreversible? At Parallel, our current line is that we leave the web as we found it. So we don't mutate things so far. And so our answer, if you want to get an OpenTable reservation, is to use us to figure out where you want the reservation. You'll spend, as a human, 30 minutes figuring that out. Once you need a more deterministic, click your way to make the reservation, it most likely requires authentication. It most likely leads to a mutable action. And I think those two, from an infrastructure perspective, being slightly, like, you really don't want your login credentials alongside the wild, wild, wild west that is the web. And you do want some separation of concerns here. Our customers, I bet you all, as savvy customers, will expect those things off of us. And even if Parallel ships a product on the action side, we will segment it where a search, read, discovery, infrastructure product is separate from a action, authentication, change the world product.
I get it from a data separation and principle perspective. From a latency perspective, what you just described to me is twice as slow, right? Because now I'm doing it all over again. So I'm not totally sold. which is to say that I think your users are going to want more. I don't know where that takes us, but I can tell you as a buyer right now, we have this struggle, right? Which is if I'm going to use the Gmail API to send the email, why would I use a different functionality to search it, right? Just find the email of who I'm sending it to, right? I think this is in a similar vein of where we have siloed sources. Let's turn to siloed sources a little bit, right? So today, I can partner with LinkedIn directly and use the LinkedIn API. I can partner with Utoro.
Can you?
Right. Let's use a different example. I can partner with, the list is getting smaller and smaller. I can partner with AcmeCo, the AI-friendly processor. And AcmeCo has an MCP, and let's really imagine that their search functionality is good on their MCP, which I think is a little bit of a fantasy today. AcmeCo is a search API. They have a Do API. I can partner with them. My head of BD is going to meet with them. Or I can hire one of you two, right, to search AcmeCo for me with everything else and deal with the blended ranking, which, by the way, is hard, right, versus AcmeCo and BottleCo together. How do I, as a buyer, strategize? How do I choose which to buy?
The AcmeCo MCP strategy feels like the Yahoo directory, saying you go to a directory, you pick your domain, then you go search within that domain. I don't think it works. So in a billion, if there are like a billion domains, billion web pages, billion MCP servers, you're going to want someone with all of that information processed, indexed, in order to allocate compute to find the one from a 500 billion set of web pages.
I think it sometimes works. Like, I'm curious, you must have users like me who say, tell me every time Swift Nation tweets a photo of Taylor, right? I mean, there have to be times where they are source specific. How do you address it internally? What do you do?
So we, as many sources as we can get access to, we try and get access to them. We are obviously smaller, so we can't negotiate the same sort of partnerships that you can. Fundamentally, the question you're asking is, if someone doesn't want me in their walled garden, can I get in?
Right.
This is a besiegement strategy, and there are war books on this that you're looking for. Either you get them to put down their drawbridge, you show them enough value, and they let you in. I think smaller players like us can't actually win that game. So we just have to show people value, that there are enough requests here that are coming to your service. If you were to open this up, this would drive traffic up, net traffic up, not down. Ultimately, if someone does not want it, I mean, you can win all the lawsuits you want, but you can't log into certain services on people's behalf.
Yeah, but at the same time, ultimately, if someone doesn't want AI agents servicing their content, what's the longstanding value of their content, right? I mean, that's the open question that I'm sure the New York Times would challenge me on, but.
I think it'll get figured out, actually. I actually think, people will have to adapt. Right now, as much as we're all talking about AI agents, most web traffic most web economics continue to be human traffic, right? And I think for different people, it'll be different thresholds of AI agents and adoption and all these products that people are building using Parallel or these always-on agents or Notion AI doing things on the web using Parallel. Once that really scales up is when people will have to rethink their strategies and adapt. And it won't be that everyone's a winner, right? Certain content will get disproportionate value and economics of the new economy, and certain things will get less so. But there will be a phase shift and change. Now, I think we have a couple minutes left. I want to switch the panel to ask you a question. You build agents. For the topic of this panel, what do you think you need for Notion customers that no one is selling you?
I actually think we call it a walled garden. I think that's the content that's the most painful for us today. I think it's a mixture of that and really loading and iterating on those web pages. And then the final question is, can you do this for me? Can you reserve this? Can you make this action, right? And then we go back to the drawing board where we thought we fixed the problem by just choosing 2 sub-processors that got us all this content, but then we have to iterate on OpenTable and make the reservation anyway. And I think that's the problem that I don't feel is solved. And as someone that does some of the vendor strategy is complicated because I also think that we're not in a world where you have one web agent, as a buyer. So, we can piecemeal it together, and a lot of our sub-processors are in this room, and we do. But I think for me, and I have some team members who work much closer to the problem. I'm curious what they would say, but I think that's what's not solved today is that strategy about, at the end of the day, LinkedIn and Twitter content is some of the richest content our customers want, not a random blog post where someone references the Twitter content, which is what's surfaced at the top of the SERP today.
As promised at the beginning of the panel, that this was like a customer conversation happening in front of 200 people, so let me brainstorm an idea with you. If I told you I have an index of all actions you could take on the web. So you could search, give me all buttons that allow me to make a reservation for a restaurant. Everywhere. So maybe a restaurant is on OpenTable, maybe it's on Talk, maybe it's on Yelp, maybe it's somewhere else. Would you want that index? Would you want to be able to search over the action space?
Yes, and I actually would prefer that because I think data exfil is a huge risk that we pay very close attention to. So when we have all of your enterprise content inside a Notion workspace, we don't want a third party to control whether or not you're searching for the ARR of all your customers and then emailing Wired Magazine that information, right? And so as an enterprise business that sells to other enterprise, that's great. But then we still have to execute taking the action, and we have to build for that, and that's kind of a solved problem, so less concerning. And then I'm sure there's another company that will help us with auth, because that's the next question.
And would you use that too?
I would, yeah. I think the ability to take actions on the web is certainly coming. And we will, if you can do something late at night, half asleep, pressing 10 buttons and buying something, agents will be able to do it very soon. This is, despite all my caution around certain problems in AI being hard, this is a pure data problem. We'll get it. Sim to real gap is low in websites. This is a solvable problem. It's coming soon.
Okay, well, I look forward to this panel reunion in 2 years where we look back and say that was all a waste of time, or that's not relevant anymore. I'm sure, we're moving very quickly, and that's where we are today, and I'm super excited to see where we are in 2 years. Same time, same place? Sound good?
Let's do it.
Done. Okay.